blind man crossed the road, trying to make the other side. Ever seen a young girl growing old, trying to make herself a bride? So what becomes of you, my love?
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Pray that he's still out there, somewhere.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us today on Eating While Honey and Locusts. Always wonderful to be with you. A pleasure to fellowship with you Tuesday by Tuesday and connect. Before we go into the message, there's some people I want to recognize because it's been tough for them, right? This time last week, we were speaking about Mark Pike, and his wife was touch and go, and she passed away. And today he's actually with the family laying her to rest. So on behalf of Eating While Honey, the wider family that you have here, the Sefer Fellowship, Mark, we just send our love to you today. You are in our thoughts and our prayers. We have not stopped interceding for you. And we actually admire your tenacity, your bravery, and your strength, and still encouraging others when you're so low and saying goodbye for the final time to your wife. So we really want to honor you for that. But there's other people. Now, there'll be people here that I don't know by name. This is very much for you also. It's not just for those who are in our viewership in the wider community. It's for every platform that we reach where we don't know your name, we don't know your situation specifically, but we're speaking into the exact components that reach and identify with so many and into your pain. Because we've also got Vicky Dawson. She lost her husband this time last year, and it's been incredibly hard for her, yet her faith in Yah is so strong. But the one person that she wants, she misses, and she's really had to rely on Yah when others could have let her down, when others are not there in the ways that Freddie used to be there for her, and in a way that only the Ruach can carry her through this. So we really do acknowledge you, your pain, and how difficult this time is with you. And you're not forgotten. Sue Squibb, do you know what a testimony? She was getting ready this time last year, last week, possibly for her mum coming to the end of her life. And, people prayed, she prayed, and it turned around. Her mum came around. She got better. She's now back at home in care. And instead of just it stopping there, she is declaring Yahusha, something she didn't understand before. But coming out of this, she had a revelation of a man covering her in a blanket. And she knew it was that Yahusha, Yahuwah, that her daughter kept on speaking about. How beautiful is that? So now they have extended time together. Heather T, do you remember her? Heather Turner. A month and a half ago, we were interceding for her life, that it be Yah's will, that we wanted her to live, but it was in Yah's hand because her situation is so, so hard. Despite it being as hard as it was, she's around. She's living today. She is out of the coma. She is regaining her speech. She is beginning to move in small bits and bobs, but she's doing it. But it was an outcome where they were saying, that's it, it's finished. And we just praise Yah for her. And her situation is so, so hard, yet Yah brought her back. So that means there's things that we do not understand, that we cannot comprehend, but it's beyond us because he gave her life. Frank and Beans, we acknowledge the pain that you're going through as well, because it's coming so close to this time that the doctors have said your mum is very close to the end of her life. So we pray for you because we know how close you are to your family, and it's not so long ago since you've been through this with your grandmother and now your precious mother. And because of your culture and your love, you're finding this very hard, but we uplift you at this time. We pray for Wesley and Femke. They're the organizers of Holland, and they've been going through an incredibly hard time. His wife was only 33 years old, and all of a sudden, with everything else that she suffers from, she had heart implications. I don't take that lightly, because they are doing so much for the communities in Holland with the Torah and spreading that and sharpening together and preparing and equipping. And then this happens. We must pray for our leaders. We must understand these things and the seasons that these attacks come in. And also, you know that Shane has been seriously affected as well. His is a chronic condition. It's not something that has just come on, but it's been impacted by an injury. And we have a long road ahead. But you know what? We're always preaching to you about, yet will I praise him. That is exactly the situation that we are in. You know, 1 hour we're good, another hour we're drained. And I'm speaking about all of you. It is moment by moment, minute by minute that we go through this. We've got several people who join us here on a Tuesday and then for Shabbat who are homeless. But you know, and I don't want to say their names for confidentiality, they pay for electricity, they pay for a cabin so they can join in to these meetings, that they can be part of fellowship and that they are getting fed. That is so humbling. And that's why it's our duty, one, to acknowledge you at times like this and recognize, yes, we know your pain. And one of them is in chronic pain. In fact, Shane, this other person, his name is Rick, and Joy, they live with chronic pain. Joy, please pray for her. She's having a small procedure today to help her with daily living. John Barr, another one of the people that you know so well here, having breathing difficulties. Do you see how the saints are being attacked? We must stand strong, pray for one another, and see that it doesn't mean you're covered, but you go through the fire, you go through the trials. James and Leah Covers, their little granddaughter has a situation. Pray, please, for all these family members. Susan Purim just getting better from pneumonia. There are so many people here. Please, if I have not mentioned your name, that doesn't mean we do not care. We're speaking into your situation. We pray for you behind the scenes, and we acknowledge the path and how narrow this road is and how painful and lonely it is for some of you. So it's not underestimated. Okay, we've got a lot to get through today. So I want to bring to you a specific scripture which is so relevant for today, let alone for when it was first, written about. So let me just go back one slide. It's Genesis 47, Bereshith, chapter 4 we're starting with. And it's really, really important because there's so many truths here. So it starts off with, they said, moreover, unto Pharaoh, for to sojourn in the land we come, for your servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now, therefore, we pray you, let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Okay, so breaking that down, what does that mean? There's so much to this chapter that I can say to you. And, it is very much about the end times. You always hear in Christendom tribulation, or you hear, if you read all of this chapter, oh, it's about a great leader and how he acquired wealth. Do you know what? I am so tired of that type of prosperity gospel being brought into a scripture like that. There is far more to this, far more deep meaning truth to help us survive and understand the times then and understand the times now. And that's what I want to share with you today. What has happened, we have to understand, will happen. What has happened will happen. The very first thing you see, right, in this small little verse here is the third and fourth seal. The third seal, of course, is the black horse. He that sat had a pair on a horse. He that sat on a horse had a pair of balances in his hand, and a measure of wheat for a dinar and 3 measures of barley for a denarius. Now, I don't need to break down all those little things. It's the fact that it's the third seal. And it's also mentioning the fourth seal, a green horse. His name that sat on it was Death, and Sheol followed him. Now, that's very significant because that is obviously going to be one of the outcomes of a famine. And power was given over them, that the fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, and with the beasts of the earth. So there are 4 methods of death, but obviously focusing on the method of death through the result of famine. Now, remember last week in the opening, I brought to you the Hebrew word for Canaan, or Canaan, as they say. It derives from Kina, and it means to be brought down, to be a heavy load. By extension of that word, it's meaning it's a humbling situation. It's a subduing situation. So Jacob and his sons were in a humbling situation. They were subdued. That's why they were sojourning, and that's why they came and petitioned before Pharaoh. Goshen, in parallel, it means a land of plenty, a land of comfort, and that's where they were going in direction to seek. The biblical names in that meaning for Goshen is approaching, drawing near. That speaks so much to us as well about approaching Messiah, approaching Yahuwah, drawing near to him, to hear him, where to go, the direction to go. It is exactly the same thing here with a spiritual implication for us now and one then, that we have to see wider than maybe we have been thought before. Exodus, it says, I will in that day set apart the land of Goshen in which my people dwell, that no swarms or flies shall be upon them, in order that you may know that I am Yahuwah in the midst of the earth. Now it says in the midst of the earth, not in the land, so it's applicable to us now in this day, generations onwards. And it's just showing how you will be preserved and how you will be protected. Verse 9, and Yaakov said unto Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. So break that down simply, right? Pilgrimage is referring to sojourning, to traveling, to the wandering life that he had. But that's applicable to us. I know for myself, my husband, my family, especially Shane and I, we don't feel settled anywhere. We feel like nomads. We're just content now. And without having a dream of a bigger life, a bigger car, as you hear Shane say, a bigger house. But we're wandering. And he was wondering, he's saying, you know, that word, it comes from the French word, which basically means foreigner. I am a foreigner in this life. I am a foreigner in this land. That is what he is saying to Pharaoh. And that is really the petition for many of us, that we feel exactly the same, if not all of the remnant. My real home, he was saying to Pharaoh, is in heaven. And that's exactly one thing that I identify with, and I know so many of you here with. Even those words, few and evil, that's referring to several elements, to the exposure, the fatigue of the field and the desert journeys and the desert living that he did for so many years. And that's where you can understand to live in Mashiach is to gain, to die is to gain. There you can understand that saying, you know, that's so popular. But also he's talking about the length of his life being nothing in comparison to eternity or in comparison to his ancestors. So he's talking in humility there, and he's also saying maybe where he lacked, where he failed, and where he sees others have done better, etc. There's so much you can go into. But what I want to draw out to you for us today is this. It shows us, it should show you also, that even his chosen, those that he crafts and he cares for, still suffer. You are not protected from the path of suffering. That is a cup that you bear. Verse 12. And Jacob nourished his father and his brethren and his father's household with bread according to their families, short and sharp. But basically what that's showing is that for those who are his selected, his chosen, you will have favor. There was no bread in the land, yet they were provided bread. Hold on to that spirituality, that supernatural truth for ourselves. And this is what I love, right? Looking at this pharaonic beast system, Pharaoh, pharaonic, even then, as we have it now, was honoring the believer. Do you see how Yah turns things around? These are the dynamics that we have to understand. And that's why you can understand Jeremiah 15, verse 11, where it says, trust, all of my remnant have this trust, because truly I'm going to cause the enemy to entreat you well and look after you in a time of evil and in a time of affliction. Well, there you just see it in verse 12 of Genesis 47, and again reconfirmed in Jeremiah 15, and it echoes to every verse of this story here, of this chapter. 13, and there was no bread in the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Mitzrayim and the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. No bread whatsoever. It was so severe. Now it hit Canaan and Egypt, and everyone suffered as a result of the famine, basically. And Yaakov gathered up all the money, this is 14 and 16, that was found in the land of Mitzrayim and in the land of Canaan, for the grain which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when money failed in the land of Mitzrayim and in the land of Canaan, all the Mitzrayim came unto Yaakov and said, give us bread, for what should we die in your presence? For the money fails. And Yaakov said, give your cattle, and I will give for your cattle if money fails. What does that mean? The money is failing, it's gone. I will give you bread in exchange and for your cattle. What is that? You've got to understand, it is usurping. Pharaoh was a government, it is usurping of the government. Now, why am I saying it into the relevance of where we are? Because all of us, especially in the UK, but I know it's happening everywhere, we have smart cities, we have 15-minute cities being introduced, council by council, county by county over here, trialing out in different ways, trying to say it's for your betterment, it's for your well-being. And they start it through government policy at local level so it doesn't seem harmful. This chapter is talking to everyone, not only then, but now. That's what I want to bring out to you. They had to leave their home. We're going to have to leave our home. It was then and it is now. It's this usurping of us and them into bondage. We have to recognize this as spiritual watchmen. We have to see this as just enhancing our perspective of what this narrow road means and of all the adversity that is being brought before us. People are being herded into 15-minute cities now. And you're wondering why I'm saying that. Well, I'm going to show you in a moment. But all hope was gone in Genesis, and that's what they're trying to do now, so that everything is gone, everything is taken away from you. Verse 18, when the year was ended, they came unto him a second year and said unto him, we will not hide it from my Adonai, how that our money is spent. My El Adonai also, our herds of cattle, has our herds of cattle. There is not out left in the sight of my Adonai, but our bodies and our land. So that's key, but our bodies and our land. Okay, let me just relate it really quickly because we want to continue. Everyone accepts digital currency. They accepted the currency that was being given to them, bartered to them at that time. No difference to where we are being presented now. Buy us and we will be your servants. We give you our bodies, we give you our land. That's how it happens. So coercively, so easy, because they were dependent for bread. They wanted the grain. They bowed down. Have we not been through this bowing down and what we will defy and stand against for the last 3.5 years? They were sold into bondage, and that is how it's still continuing since 2019 and magnifying and taking form now through these cities, through these shapes from what we had with the scandemic, moving onwards, but all part and parcel of the one and the same story. Verse 19, wherefore shall we die before your eyes, both we, our land, buy us our land for bread, and we our land will be servants unto Pharaoh, and give us seed that we may live and not die in the land and not be desolate. So that's very much how I just spoke of verse 18. Don't leave us to be desolate. Own us. And in today's context, that is the 15-minute cities, but it's more than that. It's from the 15-minute cities being moved into FEMA camps, and you have to understand the perspective of that. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that. 2021, and Yusuf brought all the land of Mitzrayim for Pharaoh, and the Mitzrayim sold every man his field, and the famine prevailed over them. The famine prevailed over them, and they became Pharaohs. And as for the people, he removed them to the cities from each end of the borders of Mitzrayim, even to the other end thereof. He removed them to the cities. Don't tell me that's not speaking for us now with what I'm speaking about, the situation that we all face here with these cities. So what does a 15-minute cities mean? You'll get there. And some of you already have an understanding of it. It's to captivate us, to keep us in bondage, to control us, to be over us. Listen, Egypt represents the world. We are fighting Egypt each and every day. And again, as we always see, it comes down to seeing that no one deceive us. We don't underestimate this situation and how this is leading to a one world government and to a one world policy. Solomon says there is nothing under the sun. What happened will happen. Revelation says what was, what is to come, and what will be. And we need to hold on to that perspective and understand these things. What happened in Genesis 47 will happen again, and it's happening this very week. I'm going to show you a video, and that will explain, and you will see how Pharaoh seizes the land, how Pharaoh seizes the equivalent of cattle and their lives in this day and age now, to do with Haiti, what's happening there. So dynamic, and something that we need to be aware of and praying.
Maui. I live in Kihei, and I wanted to share some local updates. Shocking, or maybe not. Did you hear about the fires? Did you hear that the government of Hawaii states their goal is to rebuild and make the entire island of Maui the first smart island? They want the entire island governed by AI, is outlined in the Hawaii Digital Government Summit of 2023 that they plan to host next month on September 25th, 2023 on Maui. Wow. Now they're going to come to the rescue for this horrible problem. And last January in 2023, there was a smart city conference in Maui to turn Maui again into the smart city island, pushing everything electric, making 15-minute smart cities. And there was also a contract last year to build a high-rise condo complex and businesses in Lahaina, which was a historic town that couldn't have any new development in this area. But now it's demolished. So now I guess they have to rebuild, right? We spent the morning trying to find places to volunteer to help. We feel helpless. There's so much going on. There's people who need assistance. We went to the War Memorial Shelter, which we learned has been taken over by FEMA. They've taken a whole bunch of supplies. People do not know where they're going. They don't trust that they're actually going to be delivered to people in need. In past FEMA situations, after disasters, they found containers full of supplies that were never given to the people. And if you go to the War Memorial, people are being told to go there if you need assistance. They are turning everyone away, saying that it's not a distribution center. It's a shelter, and unless you're checked into this shelter, you will receive nothing. And I will say, for donations on the island, please be considerate of your fellow humans, because there's a lot of moms that need diapers and wipes and formula, and everything has been purchased and given as donations, and now it is being hoarded by Red Cross and FEMA, not being distributed to those who actually need them. So ship things in from Amazon. I shared today that you could ship things to the Maui Food Bank. There's some other local organizations that will actually get your items to the people. And FEMA is also making people sign paperwork just.
Okay. So I will put the link so you can watch the rest of that video because it's too long, but I wanted the emphasis of FEMA. Can you see how they are involved today? And what she explains about 7 minutes into it is to do with these 15-minute cities, to do with DEW and how that has caused these fires. You know, Second Baruch, and this is very important as we close, it's this basically. It is Second Baruch. It talks about the 4 destroying angels with the 4 lamps referred to as the torch of fire. We're seeing that here. We're seeing also, if you watch the news, you see the mother of darkness, the witch, Oprah, handing out pillows to the victims as she did in Paradise, California. Can you see how this is scripted? Can you see how it is panning out? We must never, ever lose that perspective. Okay, before we go into the segment, please understand that this is not on YouTube. This type of topic cannot go on there. We will do an edited version, but you always have to go back to the Eating While Honey website, where you get the uncensored program with full content of Doctors Pidgeon sharing and our guest Jon. That's very important you get used to that, please. So please do that, because We're taken down by 200 and something nations on Facebook, regions, not nations. So please understand where to go and how to navigate this. So without further ado, let me just introduce you to Jon Hallam. Now, as he comes on, he doesn't need an introduction. You know and you respect him and love him so much. He is a dear friend to Dr. Pidgeon, myself, and Shane, and he is an advisor, independent researcher, but one to Eating More Honey and to Stephen Pidgeon as well. So welcome, Jon.
Hey Jess, hey everybody. Thanks for having me on. Powerful start. The suffering we're going through at the minute as the remnant. I think we are nearing the end. There's a lot of dark forces out there now. I think there's a lot more portals out to this world to they're being opened in different ways to us. And we see the green horse there. We see the environment horse running. As we race into subjection, effectively, the government seem to be playing open hand now. They're not hiding things. They seem to just putting things in place, left, right, and centre. Through the UK, we're seeing a lot of road closures at the minute, and you think, well, they're putting a lot of smart things at at junctions and things, and you're thinking, well, what's going on here and there. So, there's more towers going up, and there's just more controls. You can't go through a train station without seeing sort of the biometric scanners and things going in place. It's not just airports anymore. You can't park at the local car park at this station now without a smartphone. So what does that mean? You can't even park in the city centre where I live at the minute without a smartphone. So we're moving into being forced into that digital realm too much.
Yes, absolutely, right before our eyes. And let's bring Stephen on with that, because usurping and so on, you speak so much against that. Welcome. Thank you for joining us as usual, our resident co-host and advisor on these programs. So it's just wonderful to have you here again. Thank you, Stephen.
Well, my pleasure to be here, Jesse. Good to see you, John. Glad we're talking about this particular topic. Things are precipitous, would be a good word to use. They're moving quite quickly now, and I think we're going to see a culmination of events between now and the end of the month. We're certainly going to see there's many people that are moving towards a climax of events. And it's a very interesting thing, because we have the ship that has dominated the world for so many years is sinking. And as it goes down, it is intent upon taking many things with it. And so let's discuss that tonight, and let's see how it goes.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, Jon, introduce, because you've done some slides and you've made preparation, and it sort of touches on what we've been saying here. And take us into that.
I was led some time ago to share a few things specifically around some of the technologies that we're seeing at the minute, whether it be AI, but there's a lot of stuff that's not being talked about, which we should be a little bit more aware of, in technology and what's around us. And also it touches on our belief system, because I think through, we've been indoctrinated through our schooling, our press, our science, into a very mechanical way of thinking, a very chemicalistic way, a very sort of binary way of thinking of things, and away from the biblical way of thinking that things could be intelligent. What is intelligent? Is the planet intelligent? Are clouds intelligent? Are the spiritual forces behind the wind, behind the rain, behind whatever? Are those things? Could it possibly be? Or are they just manifestations of, evaporation off the sea, which causes the land to sea breezes and things? Now, obviously, it might be a combination, but there's a big ecosystem here, right? It's self-regulating, etc., etc. So today, I've got a few things just to bring onto the table to share. And the other thing is also on the UFO topic slightly, because there's, again, this is going to be an interesting show at a high level, because there's a few things to put on the table. And Dr. B, you got to humour me a little bit. I know you're very broad-minded, which is great. But I think we need to bring this back into the biblical perspective, because things like UFOs, obviously we know the fallen ones, but it's probably just a little bit more than that when you start digging into a few things. So Jess, if we take away the few slides, and we'll, if you don't mind, I'll talk us through. You'll understand after the first 3 or 4 slides why I'm discussing the way we are. So obviously, this is for the glory of Yah and the Son. And about his creation, right? The more you dig into science, the more strange things come out, the more you got to stand back in wonderment at the whole of his creation. It's just awesome, right? So I'm suggesting that we need to return to the biblical view of creation a little bit, just to pinch ourselves a bit. So, okay, next slide, Jess, please. That'd be great. So as usual, got the usual reading elements in the background. So Dr. P, I put the Shamim on there as well for the Pockets of Moses. We touch on that. And a couple of the books, Robert Temple released a very important book last year on plasma, which I'm going to just touch on today. And there's an old book from Trevor James Constable, which is kind of an interesting one as well. An old UFO writer that was kind of aborted from the UFO community for being too out there, basically. His views were just not mainstream for the UFO people, etc. So it's kind of interesting. So we'll go through it with they're all hinged together with some common elements, which has an underpinning link to the Bible and creation, obviously. Okay. Yeah. So let's kick off then. So we're shown here that we have a few categories of things. We've got in Jubilees 2:2, it says, "For on the first day he created the heavens which are above the earth, and the waters, and all the spirits which serve before him. The angels of the presence, the angels of sanctification, the angels of the spirit of fire and angels, and the angels of the spirit of the winds, the angels of the spirit of clouds, of darkness, of snow, of hail, of hoarfrost, the angels of the voices, of thunder, of lightning, the angels of the spirits of the cold and heat, the wind and the spring and the autumn and of winter." All right, so you see very clearly itemized the spirits of all these different forces that we take as mechanisms, but he alludes there's angels or forces that suggest some kind of intelligence behind them. So that's the elements. Beneath there we see the Pockets of Moses. Again, it's apocrypha, but it's kind of an interesting conversation. Suggests that the heavenlies. But who are the two Shamin, the dark ones, who stand by the prayers for my father Adam? And Seth telleth his mother that these are the son of the moon, and themselves fall down and pray on behalf of the father Adam. He said to him, "And where is their light? Why are they taken such a dark appearance?" And Seth answered her, "The light hath not left them, they cannot shine before the light of the universe, the Father of light, and on this account their light has been hidden from them." So we've got an illusion there that the sun and the moon have some intelligence, some presence, and they're able to appear before the Father. Again, this is a bit out there, just bear with me. And at the bottom there, I've got Yahushua rebukes the elements of Mark 4:39. He didn't call on Michael or any of the archangels to help him. He said, "And he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was great calm." Obviously, calm on the sea. Okay, so he's directing himself towards the elements and stopping them. Okay, so that's scriptural, mostly. What is? It's from Apocrypha and basic scripture. So if we go to the next slide, Jess. All right. So Robert Temple and various other scientists are now saying at least 99%, and some say 99.9% of the universe is composed of plasma. We therefore live in a plasma universe. First statement. Now science is changing a bit, and you can see Robert Temple at the bottom saying the sun must be intelligent, the universe must be intelligent because they are made of plasma. Now that is bizarre, right? That is bizarre. Most people would say, put a white jacket in the sky, throw them away. But as I go through the next few slides, you'll kind of understand a little bit more, because this is one of the hidden sciences that have been taken away from us from about 1870, since the CRT tube was invented. Okay. Jess, sorry, you got to bear with me. There's about
Yeah, no,
outlandish,
that's
but
fine. Just before you go any further, we do apologize. It doesn't seem to be live on the Eating While Honey and Locust platform. So we're trying to sort that out for you. You can go direct to Jessica Knott profile or Eating While Honey and Locust page on Facebook and get it there. So sorry.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much. So, okay, so then, is plasma alive? So Bonn, a leading expert in the 20th century plasma physics, observed in amazement that once electrons were in plasma, they stopped behaving like they were individuals and started behaving like they were a large and interconnected whole. Although individual motions of electrons seem to be random, vast numbers of electrons are able to produce collective effects that are surprisingly well organized and appear to behave like life forms. The plasma continually regenerated itself and enclosed impurities in the wall the same way that a biological organism, like an amoeba, might encase a foreign substance in it like a cyst. He is so amazed at these results that he often said, the electron sea is alive. Now, the electron sea I'll go into in a few minutes, okay? But, you know, these are physicists alluding to the fact that there's a deeper force of nature behind things, okay, or creation. Okay, Jess, want to... So, okay, so I've got some evidences to put on the table to share and talk about through a few different people. So, again, most of these people have had their work torn up and they've been completely thrown out of society for their beliefs, right? Some of them, but they've been backed up now with scientific papers, and there's been releases and leaks about things. And we'll just spin through a few of these to start off with, if that's okay. And you'll understand why I'm going to with the different bits and pieces. So let's go to Wilhelm Reich. So Wilhelm Reich was born in 1897 in Austria and died in 1957. So he left Germany in 1933, the rise of Hitler, didn't like the Nazis, etc. And he went to Norway. And in Norway, he spent a few years there, and he came to believe of the existence of an energetic life force he termed orgon energy, which is produced by bions, which is microscopic organic units measuring the state transition between non-living and living matter. So under a high-power microscope, you can see green globules coming out of disintegrating food. Okay. He also noticed that the skin also gave bioluminescence. He said that germs brought near bions were killed, and is able to capture this energy in boxes with metal and organic matter in between them. And he called this weird energy orgon energy. Okay. So anyway, he left Norway, went to the USA, because he released a paper and he said he's a charlatan, etc., had to leave the country. In 1947, the USA launched an investigation into his research. In 1954, they put an injunction stopping him from shipping anything interstate on any publications of equipment. He is charged in violation, put in prison, and died 2 years later of a heart attack. All his papers were destroyed, and his equipment was destroyed or confiscated. And this is in the 21st century. Some consider this wholesale destruction to be one of the most blatant examples of censorship in U.S. history. Now, this is the Britannica.com, right? So this is a cover-up of some sort of something he's found, something that they're looking at, and shouldn't be surprising to us. On the next slide, Jess, if you don't mind, then these are the newspaper articles from the time of what he is doing. So here, using this orgon energy, which if you look at that machine in the middle, it looks like a missile firing thing. These are just metal tubes with pipes that go down into an earthing, which is like water. And on the far right, you can see that kind of tube. So he took this device he called a cloudbuster or a rainmaker. And in 1953, the blueberry farmers asked him for help, basically. There'd been a drought for 6 weeks destroying crops. So he put this in place. Within 10 hours, there's 2 inches of rain in the next couple of days. So this thing seems to work. It's recorded. It's been used since. And it's using this thing called orgon energy, which is kind of mysterious etheric energy in the atmosphere. Okay. Now you've got to think, until the 1960s, we thought the space was a vacuum. No, we don't. We've got things like solar wind and other things, right? So there's energy behind things that we don't fully understand. As soon as people come up and show this energy, it gets a bit weird. Like at the bottom here, he's got 2 motors there. One is driven by the human hand. As it gets close to the motor, it spins with this orgon energy around your body. And the second one is driven from the atmosphere straight away through orgon energy. Okay.
Now, John, can I ask you some questions on this?
Please. Yeah.
So, saying here, you say looking at somebody from a distance, they know you're watching them as the orgon from your eyes transmits to their body. Now, is this a stream consistent with like electrons in an electronic field, so that there's a stream of orgons that are just out there, kind of moving it back and forth, or?
It is. You got to think, and I'll go on to the next few slides. I'll help with this, but it is a good question because, you hear different things that you know yourself. You think, oh, somebody's watching me, and turn around and somebody's like looking at a curtain window or out of a car, you or whatever. So it is a thing. And on here, he's suggesting that orgon, and he's got another thing there where he calls it cloud busting. You can do with your eyes by focusing on a cloud and whatever, focusing your orgon. But in the book, it goes a bit deep. But he's showing that you can, by using your body energy, you can focus it on things and have material effects. And it's literally, as you say, it's kind of like you can get charged with it and discharged with it. So you'd be in the sun quite a bit, your body energy would charge up, and you'd have more orgon energy. And you eat good food, get more orgon energy, etc. If you run down, it might be a bit weaker, but you have this impact, you have this energy that comes out. And he was able to prove various mechanical movements by having a hand close to an object without touching it. So that shows that there's a biometric field around you. Now, this thing, as we get onto in a minute, is you spot on in terms of electrons and protons and so on. Is because you got to think the Earth is negative, so everything we have is electricity with electrons, elec for electricity. Now, when we get into the atmosphere, and what Tesla did, and what some of these people, I've got a positive there on the top of the thing, is proticity. Now, proticity uses positive to drive the motor, not negative. So you just got to think of things in a different way. And you see YouTube people having spinning motors from the air. How does that work? Right? Tesla had this thing in 1911 where this big tower he built, right, which you could get energy from the air. And the pyramids, we know that they had special harmonics and energies they could bring down from the sky, whatever, and make with the earth. So there's a whole dimension there of substance that is being hidden, or we don't talk about, or this guy's had all his work destroyed.
Now, let me go back. Also, you mentioned about organs being present and taking apart bacteria. Now, this whole idea of the germ theory of disease, whether you're talking about Louis Pasteur or Edwin Koch, this idea of the germ theory of disease has, this idea of bacteria doing this. And then here we have these organs that are capable of entering into the jurisdiction, if you will, and completely consuming all the bacteria that's present, right?
Yep.
So this has, you can imagine that the pharmaceutical companies in the United States may not want to hear this from Reich, right? No, you won't be talking about that stuff here in the U.S., right? Who was the censoring body in the U.S.? Look at who shut down Nikola Tesla, right? That was DuPont. The DuPont Corporation shut him down because, they wanted to be able to market electricity and to put a meter up that would allow them to charge. And Tesla was saying, I can produce electricity all over the world that's free of charge, and everybody can access it just as they did in the antediluvian period under the pyramid, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Everybody can access. Well, we can't have that. And the next thing you know, Tesla is relegated to a one-room apartment in New York where he spends the rest of his life. Yeah, I don't know if you saw the pictures of him when he was on the verge of death, but I mean, there wasn't an extra ounce on him anywhere.
He's like a skeleton.
Yeah. Horrific.
Completely. Yeah. But no, so this is just an example that it is several witnesses, right? Otherwise, you just think you're a clown. Mainstream doesn't talk about this stuff. So how do you get an understanding of these things? Otherwise, you need to get some documented evidence, and you got to take to the spirit. And also, the way I work is if I go into a bookshop, I ask to be led to something, and I get a couple of books, I bring it back, and if they're useful, and I'm on this program for a reason. Otherwise, I'm an instrument like we all are. So hopefully some of this will be useful. Okay.
Well, thank you, because you break it down so well so that we can take it back to scripture. You do that hard work for us, so thank you for that.
Well, I think, Dr. ping-ponging is quite useful in yourself. So if we go to the next slide, this is interesting because Trevor James Constable was a big fan of William Wright's orgon, and he was looking at this orgon energy thinking, right, so this is organic energy. It can be used to create weather. What else can we do? So he started then taking shots of the infrared. And so in the highlighted bit here, it says, in the mode of their manifestations to mankind, spacecraft and biological UFOs have been mutually confused all through the modern period down to this current day. Now, I was super skeptical of this. I'm thinking, well, what on earth You see the classic UFOs, discs, etc., and you think, oh well, is that a cover up? Was Roswell a cover up, and so on. So you don't know what to believe. But this guy in the book at the beginning has definite photos. So if you look at the right, at the top, you can see these were taken in the daytime with infrared film. So it's beyond the human eye. But he's showing some kind of disc object here, which is called a UFO, with what he is looking at, the fields of force extending outwards across the disc, on the first one vertically, and the second one slightly horizontally. But to scale, you can see the power lines. Now, this is the Los Angeles business district when people went to lunch. So it's happening above us all the time. They not hear it, but it's kind of in the invisible spectrum, infrared. At the bottom, was a bit more curious, is on the left you can see a mountain, and above it you can see two massive things. And on the right you can see a massive thing that's over his head. And these massive things are like amoebas, taking them at Mojave Desert. Again, this is 1957. Now, they're very strange, but there's in his book, he talks about these climbers of the Himalayas that would often see these sort of things and describe, we saw two great objects above us, or there's a great object above us, and it seemed to be just hovering above us, and it looked like a life form, like an amoeba, like a big cell or something. Now, that's a bit strange. On the left bottom, there's a link to YouTube, and that's a NASA mission where they took the space shuttle up to put a tether into space. In it, there's about 35 what look like amoeba type things floating around this. Okay, so again, he's just suggesting that in this ether, in this other substance that you can take infrared shots of, there are organisms out there, and they're up there all the time. Now, again, I'm not trying to lead us into any particular X, Y, Z here. I'm just commenting that, there's UFO disclosures going on at the moment. They're obviously malevolent. They're obviously fallen ones, but they're not necessarily all mechanical. There can be these sorts of things as well, which could be, who knows? Are these the spirits of the fallen ones? Or these? What are they? It's I don't know. It's just a thing. So it's just to keep an open mind, really. So if we spin on Jessica, then you'll. So this is where we hit the hard science of today, away from the sort of biometrics and the orgone energy, into the classical elements here. So, Aristotle said there's 4 classical elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Today we have the elements of solid, liquid, gas, and we have plasma, the 4th element. Okay, and I think as we go through things, solids are fairly obvious. It's granite, salt, copper. It's everything around us. Liquids are fairly obvious as well. Gases are fairly obvious, but plasma is where people get a bit lost. It's like, what is that stuff? Is it like a gas? And what it actually is, it's, if you think, it's all particles that don't make up an atom, or it's broken atoms. So it's electrons, it's protons, etc. that are so small you don't see them. They can go through your body and they're all around us. But as we know, the 99% of the universe is these, right? These are like the Lego bricks without being built. They're kind of like the soup around us, okay? So the best way to describe it is on the right here. I'll just talk through this. So the sun is plasma, and it burns about 10,000 degrees on its surface. This high temperature causes the molecules to collide so violently that they are broken apart into individual atoms. Then the negatively charged electrons are knocked off the atoms, creating plasma, which can be affected by electric and magnetic fields. Electric fields are created between electrons and protons, and these generate magnetic fields. The solar wind is plasma, which hits the Earth's outer atmosphere and creates auroras. So examples of plasma are the sun and stars, gas clouds, interstellar gas clouds, got the Earth's ionosphere, lightning, plasma cutters, and I think the easiest one is neon signs. But if you've got neon lights, like the old strip lights you have that flicker into existence, right? That neon sign is burning at twice the temperature of the sun, like 20,000 degrees. But you can touch the outside. Why is that? Like if you're going to fire in a room of a house, you've got a fire burning at a few hundred degrees, and it warms the whole room up. Whereas you've got something in the plasma tube there that's burning at 20,000 degrees and doesn't even get warm on the outside. So that shows you there's something very strange in the physics realm that stops the 20,000 degrees from just, burning up the whole house, okay, which is the whole plasma,
Yeah.
which we're getting onto now. So
Really?
plasma has some very special characteristics. And this is the realm of science that since the cathode ray tube in 1870 has gone underground. Right? It's been hidden away, and there's various reasons for that. And we'll get onto that in the next few slides, if that's okay. So the first thing about plasma is, as soon as you put any power through it, it turns into a helix, a double helix, the same as DNA. It looks like DNA, acts like DNA in terms of having currents going up and down it, etc. And it appears at normal human level. Obviously, it appears at galactic level as well. So you get filaments between galaxies, between planets, and between the sun and the Earth. So the best example of this is with the sun coming to the Earth. So you've got the Aurora Borealis, or the Northern Lights, which are the Birkeland currents, which are coming to the Earth from the sun, effectively, through one of these tubes or filaments in a helix, which is a DNA helix. Okay, so that's the way current travels in plasma. So just go to the next slide. Again, I'm speeding through a few of these. You have to bear with me a little bit because we get into the practicality of this in a little bit. So dust is a funny old thing. If you get dust in things such as sawmills or cake factories where you get lots of dust coming up there from flour, it's highly combustible, and it can cause explosions and things. Okay, when you get dust, when it gets electrons and things going into dust, what happens there? It's also very dangerous. In this case, what happens is the electrons stick and the protons stick to the dust, and it starts to react. So the particles start spinning, creating energy, and the electrons and plasma clouds can have millions of volts, basically, through them as these particles spin with each other and cause kind of life, if you like, through electromagnetism. Yes, if you want to go to the next slide, this will get into a point in a second. So observations. There's a team here in 2007 that concludes that complex self-organized plasma structures exhibit all the necessary properties to qualify them as candidates for inorganic living matter that may exist in space, providing certain conditions allow them to evolve naturally. So they have things such as the self-healing, they do self-duplication, they have metabolic rates within them, they've got bifurcation surface memory marks, etc., and they self-organize themselves into helical structures. So these are scientists saying that these plasmas have strange things that look like life. Okay.
Okay, hold on.
Thank you. So as we look at these clouds, the moon is one of our orbs, and in 2018 there's officially 2 other moons around the Earth, and they are basically L4 and L5 on here, which are clouds. And these are plasma clouds that are either side of the moon. They're dusty complex plasma. They're thought to have, again, it sounds very bizarre, but the science now is starting to think they're wondering what they are as entities, because they've seen how plasma works in a lab. They see how it self-organizes. They see how it has effectively, and again, I'll go into this in a minute, some electronics in them. So what's all that about? On the right, you can see the sun with a vortex, with a filament going to the vortex for the Northern Lights on the right hand side. Again, going around the plasma around the Earth, so that the Earth has its own plasma shield. At the bottom, there's a research article there that's talking about the plasma around the moon. So all the moon, the Earth, the sun are all plasmas. Okay, and these plasmas again are thought to have intelligence through science. So
now, question on this: these 2 plasma clouds that are floating with the moon. Is it possible that these clouds are disguising something within the cloud?
It's very possible. I mean, I think it's one of these things where if they were, we wouldn't be told about it anyway. I think with the right again, you got to think these clouds. It's like the clouds for us because we're quite small. If we're hugely big, they might look like solid objects, I suppose. But you're right. Within them, there could well be having anything. There could be big motherships in them. There could be anything. We don't know. There could be organic type entities that we don't know about. I mean, you have to think. What are ghosts and things? What are spirits? They're spiritual entities that manifest in certain ways on our realm. And they might be able to influence things around us, whether it be by sound or by clouds or whatever, right? So, but they are, scientists taking them seriously. Let's put it that way. Okay. Even Mike from the World has talked about the Space Force taking them seriously, bizarrely. So, it's
right. Next question for you on L4 and L5. Are these opposed in their magnetosphere? I mean, is one positive, the other negative?
I don't know, but they're sat in the same orbit as the moon, and that orbit is basically around where we would have, in that other program on the firmament. That's where that would be, on the edge of the ionosphere or the magnetosphere. They're sort of sat right on the edge of that, along with the moon, either side. And the solar wind is keeping them completely charged all the time. So even if they lose energy anytime, the solar wind is filling them full of electrons all the time. In fact, our whole solar system is being filled. Our sun is a generator for plasma, and it's sending these electrons around the whole of the solar system. And so any craft or any entity that can absorb the electrons, if you like, can live off that energy in our solar system. Okay. So, Jess, and this is a bit sort of out there. So, if you look on the right here, there's an article came up, and it says Nita Farahey, a Duke University professor and futurist, gave a presentation at Davos about neurotechnology and the creating of brain transparency. Farahey paints the picture of the near future where every office worker could be fitted with a small wearable that would constantly record brain activity, creating an omnipotent record of your thoughts, attention, and energy that your boss could study at leisure. Okay, so you couldn't make this stuff up, right? But they've got this whole thing about, be able to monitor your brain waves and see what you're thinking. If you're dreaming of a holiday, you're not being in full focus concentration like a chess player or something, they could potentially, fine you for not working and concentrating properly, potentially, right? So, very strange.
Looks like I'm going broke.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to be part of this system, eh? So, and then Mike from the World says, he reckoned the other week that the Apple smartwatch could read your DNA. He's also mentioned in past broadcasts that there's remote body scanning is possible. So when you go to an airport, it's not just magnetics; they can scan your whole body, see your bones, all that sort of stuff, right? So, is this possible, right? So, if you spin to the next slides, I'll show you how it's possible. So, there's been a technology revolution that you may or may not have heard of. I hadn't heard of it, but obviously with vacuum tubes, great for guitar amps and things, but give a lot of heat off, and they're big, right? So that was a 1904 type invention. Semiconductors took over, miniaturizing things, making things cool, and that's why I got transistor radios, etc., right? And then 1973, we got the Josephson junction, which probably nobody's heard of, or very few people won't understand what it is or how it can be used. But basically, it's like a semiconductor transistor, but it works on a superconductor basis, okay? And it's a big transformation in electronics that's not it's in the commercial arena, but not the common public arena at the minute for obvious reasons, okay? If we go to the next slide, Jess, I'll go into that a little bit more. So basically, you've got to think, as soon as you get superconductors involved, you've got to get rid of all the laws of Ohm's law, you've got zero resistance, zero heat. You've got a game changer for electronics. Okay, so you use the zero loss, zero heat usage, etc. These can be used as switches, transistors, so letting just one electron through a gate at a time, and they appear in these plasmas, like the clouds I mentioned. All right. So the two things I saw obviously for this is obviously quantum computers and AI use this technology as the backbone. That's why quantum computers got those massive cooling units. Right, it's for cooling it down to get the superconductivity working for these Josephson junctions, so it works. Okay, and the second thing is these monitoring scanning devices. So this device called SQUID, which is the superconducting quantum interface device. This thing is thousands of times more able to measure things than anything we have currently, or had currently, let's put it that way. It can measure your brain. Brain operates electrically. It can monitor that remotely. It can monitor the heart rates. These are for geological research at distance and submarine detection. So if you can monitor one atom or some atom, one particle, like one electron, from a distance, then you can monitor the whole person, okay, through the auras, through the magnetics, etc. So they can scan you from a distance, okay. Now this,
but interestingly enough here too, John, when you talk about the geological research, so you're talking about rates of decay, the so-called carbon testing, radioactive decay, etc. Being able to look into these things and say, okay, let's take a look at a particular rock or a particular geological setting and measure with specificity its rate of decay, how long it's been, what the situation may be, and not relying upon the old carbon dating test. Okay?
Yes. Yeah. No. Well, you're right. Actually, be more exactly. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? And they could look at the magnetism. How whereabouts on the Earth are you? How's that changed, etc. How's the pole changed? The pole's moving, kilometers every year, so they can plot that going back and see how things have been factored in the past, etc. What shifts have happened. So, but it's kind of interesting. But these devices are available. They're there. They're not in the mainstream conversations, but we know that the beast system must have it, right? It's documented. It's there. So, okay, so that's that. So the fifth element. There's a strange film of the '90s with Bruce Willis called The Fifth Element. I don't know if you ever saw it, and it had the whole concept was they had earth, water, wind, fire, whatever the four elements were, and the fifth element was going to save Earth from this dark planet coming to destroy the Earth. Okay, but the fifth element here, I'm suggesting, is the bioplasma, this orgone energy and superconductivity. So they found, obviously, superconductivity started in 1911, but 1964, the US Naval Research, obviously, they had the papers from, all the hidden sort of research that's been going on, and they've got these classified document there talking about Coleman, who suggests that the area of organic conductors, organic magnets, and organic superconductors may contribute to an enormous amount of the building of new materials for commercial value in the coming years. And that's going back like half a century, right, or more. So they knew about this stuff then, but obviously it's gone underground, right? 1989, by happenstance, some European scientists found traces of superconductivity in organic matter. And a year later, there's a conference, and everything went quiet again. So when you look now, the D-Wave quantum computer is now organic. For the 10th generation, and I think maybe about 2012, they put organic substances in it. Okay. The reason you do that is so that you can get superconductivity near room temperature. So you need massive cooling arrays around it. Okay.
Okay. Now, before you go on here, John, so when we're talking about the Josephson junction, is what we're talking about here in 1990 or in 1989 when they spot traces of superconductivity in organic matter. This would imply that there's some kind of Josephson junction existing in the organic matter, does it not?
Spot on, exactly. In organic matter, in dust clouds, and also at room temperature, not minus 274 Kelvin or whatever it is for the super cool stuff.
Right. Very interesting. So now they've come back the full loop, and they're justifying Reich's determination initially.
Exactly, but the thing is, it's still a bit under the covers, right? It's been talked about. You see, I mean, I've got a problem with the media. With the fact, lots of problems with the media, but I've found in the past 18 months, they're just swamping us with scientific research breakthroughs. They're swamping us with sort of archaeological breakthroughs. All of this massive information being thrown at us in little bits and randomized. So it's very hard to concentrate and take anything in. But this stuff is around if you look for it. But superconductivity, these Josephson junctions, they have. You've got to imagine that these boys know what they're doing. They've been working on it since 1964. They've had breakthroughs. They've discussed, that was a classified document that was declassified. They've done stuff with it, right? So that's just conversation. But okay, now I get a bit more into us. So
And just so you know, John, we've got 25 minutes so that you can get to the important parts.
yeah, that's cool. Thank you. We're sort of hitting it now, really. So I think, when you start looking at things, we know about the live flash. You can go onto YouTube, and when the eggs fertilize, you get the live flash. You can see like a sequence there, a clip from YouTube. We know we're predestined. Ephesians 1:4. According to His goodwill, He's predestined us here at this time, and we're fearfully and wonderfully made. So, I'm just taking the science out of this picture and bring it back to basics. That there's all spirituality behind it all. It's got to be preordained before anything happens, etc. Right. So the life flash is fairly known. The death flash is less known, and obviously, when you die, certain things happen. But this is an article I just found. I was just looking for confirmations, if you like, and I'll just read it through. One such phenomenon, well discussed in this is near-death experiences or actual death experience literature, is received very less attention from the scientific community. Is a malfunction of mechanical objects such as clocks stopping, malfunction of TVs and other electronic devices, etc., starting at the moment of death in a room with a dying person. Considering the results of a few scientific investigations that demonstrate the role played by biophotons in triggering potential changes in the processing of mechanical objects, here we propose that specific mechanisms involving biophoton emissions could probably be related to unexplainable phenomenon surrounding the moment of death. So there's a plasma release at death. On the far right, you can see a picture of, it's not like you're going to get blinded by lightning, right? It's probably a slow film over 2 hours or something, but it shows the release of biophotons through the skin as your plasma leaves you, effectively, your plasma body or part of who you are.
I had a friend that was an atheist, and he was very alarmed. I think this was in the mid 70s when someone had taken an infrared photograph of a person dying in a hospital room on an emergency gurney. And he said, okay, he was expecting, okay, poof, the light was gone out. That's it. End of story. But he said when they took it the infrared, that the shape of the body rose off the table. It's consistent and 100% shape, and then stood up and then exited the building. And as an atheist, he was stunned. He was shocked, right? Wow. And he really didn't have anything to say from that point forward.
Yeah, well, no, 100%. And this is the whole thing, you see. This is what people keep quiet about. It's like all this sort of stuff just gets hushed up. People don't want to think about the consequences or anything else of these sort of things. But I think, as you said in one of your other programs, Dr. P, scientists become godlike after a while. They turn to believe in Yah because there's no other excuse. How can things automatically, like these plasmas, how can they self-organize? How can they heal themselves? When you look at things like this and you start studying the bioplasmas for death, etc., they know something's happening. Life is beyond the physical.
Near-death experience, John, of when someone like Stephen said, they're coming off the gurney, they're seeing their bodies below, and they're seeing a light, and sometimes they see a dark tunnel. So either the light is referring to, it's generally a dark tunnel before you see the light if you're going to heaven. Otherwise, you stay in this dark tunnel until you die.
It's all of that, and the thing is, unless you're that person, you don't know, right? Unless you come back and tell somebody, and then someone's going to believe you don't know. But physically now, they're able to monitor these things. They know there's weird stuff happens in the rooms. They know that there's biophotons they can measure. If it's in candlelight or dimly lit or infrared, you can see the mist out of the mouth or the nose, etc., coming out of the person. So these things are material things, And obviously in 2 Esdras, the Lost Verses, which I downloaded myself off the Sefer website because they've got, I put it into my Sefer's a bit of an older one, so I put it into that. Esdras asks the question, right? And he gives in the next 15 or 20 verses a visceral account of what happens at your death. And if you want to have a slap in the face, read that.
Now let's put some of this logic together for a second, John, because if the organ is intelligent, it's a sentient group, and it's a sentient grouping that has grouped in particular around the carnality of a human being, right?
Yeah.
We won't call this the ruach, but it very well could be the ruach that we're discussing here. So you have a sentient grouping of the organ within and around the being. Then the carnality aspect of the being dies, but the sentience is retained inside that organ. And not only sentience retained, but so is the grouping. Now, you showed earlier that when you see a grouping of this plasma grouping together at some point, they begin to act in uniformity. They begin to act in a collective manner.
Self-organize.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so it strikes me that the logic of this is to conclude that a group of this plasma that is grouped together in these organs that have grouped together in sentience that have collectivized around a particular set of intelligence over a period of
Yep.
time, that they would
Yep.
retain that for as long as they're in existence.
Exactly. And you put your other garments on, so your other garment is this plasma garment when you leave your body, and you go to your destination, you're taken to heaven or hell or whatever, right? So,
Yeah.
that's the sort of,
When a
sorry.
person dies, if their eyes are left open, although every other function is gone, they can still visually see, but they just can't talk, react, or respond, but they can see and they can
Wow.
hear. And it takes
It's
several
interesting.
hours into the next day to disappear and to
Yeah.
dissipate. So that's why
So,
it's important to continue speaking.
oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, we know the spirit hangs around for 7 days, is it, Dr. P? I think it was. I forget now. It's
7 days.
yeah. So, but and Robert Temple says the death flash is full of information. Now, obviously, he's saying that based on his plasma knowledge rather than his spiritual knowledge, but it all ties into the same equation, right? So, if we go to the next slide, then again, this goes a little bit more. So, I threw this down this afternoon, but it's kind of interesting because bioplasma EMFs, right? Again, look at the dates. These aren't like last year. It's in 1935. Japanese scientist Takada showed the rate of blood clotting was relative to cellular activity. So he's saying that's EMF rays from the sun causing your body to behave like the moon does. Obviously for ovarian cycle, etc. Right? And according to Meadow, humans emit 10 million particles per hour. Now, particles aren't atoms. They're like electrons and whatever from your body. Okay, it could be photons per day. That's been measured. And on the right, there's an interesting study here. Again, this is kind of an old study, 1970, done by Pressman. And he concluded in his study, and this has been researched by a lot of people, and it's still a benchmark study for scientists now, apparently, that DNA molecules are the generators of radio frequency signals. RNA molecules are the amplifiers of those signals. Enzymes and amino acids are effectors of these signals, and cell walls are the noise filters. So in summary, EMFs, electromagnetic fields, carry information that activates molecules containing information, which trigger life systems within the body. So
Boom.
that's where
But I think it's also true here that there's an intake going on as well. Not only is the DNA molecule a generator of radio frequency signals, but also that double helix acts as an antenna intaking as well. So where you have 240 million per day being of plasma particles being broadcast, if there is an equal amount that is coming in. There's information that is also coming into the body.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the sun could be giving photons that give us certain instructions. For all we know, it could be it could be Mark Steele with the 5G stuff, right? There's different things triggering us in ways we don't even know. But we've got to be conscious. I mean, I'll tell you something for myself. After Mark Steele's thing last year, or whatever, I had some transformers at my feet. Right? I had a big power pack with about 6 transformers on my computers, and I'd had some like a rash on my legs for like a year. I thought, what's going on there? I moved that transformer away, the electrics, and within 6 weeks, I cleared up after having this thing for about 2 years with it being at my feet, and that was all electromagnetics. All right, so there's something in that.
Yeah. Next slide.
Yes, please. So this one is a 2015 study, which actually has been, I've put the BBC down, but they do come up with some interesting things sometimes. But this one is everyone's surrounded by a unique cloud of millions of their own bacteria. Now, this is another plasma cloud, but are these unclean spirits? Is this a cloud? Read on. So it says, walk through somebody else's cloud, and it will rain bacteria in your skin and be breathed into your lungs. The study on 11 people published in the journal PeerJ showed that it's possible to identify people from their microbial plasma. So the myoplasma, which is, or the miasma they call it there, is like a bioplasma plasma around you, okay, biological plasma. One microbiologist said the findings were simply gross. Studies have already shown that our microbiome, the collection of bacteria, viruses, and fungi that live on our skin and in our bodies, outnumbers our own cells by 10 to 1. So we've got to think that there's 10 times the amount of cells surrounding our body in this cloud than there are on our body with all this fungi. And if you look at the book by Robert Temple, he is saying that these are all things our body's ejected. So all the illnesses you've had and you've ejected are still lingering around your body, but just in your cloud, but not in your body biologically, he's suggesting. Okay. And then Dr. Newman said he agrees, the gross findings, etc., etc. But you've got to think, if you've got this thing extending a foot around, it might be a foot, might be 2 feet, might be 6 inches, might be an inch, I've got no idea, but it's not like, it's not 20 feet anyway. But this, in theory, you could catch things by proximity, by touch, or by just very close to somebody. And I've been out with people that have been quite drunk, and I've not drunk a thing, but if I've sat right next to them on a bus or something, I feel quite queasy, right? So that's a proximity thing. It might be their breath, but it might also be the plasma, right?
I do think there are times when the plasma aura can be really quite large, 10 feet, 20 feet even, that the aura can be quite expanded. And and then when you talk about bacteria, viruses, fungi, etc., how many times you've been around a person you say, well, I'm not going to touch that person because I'm afraid I'm going to catch something. You don't touch them and you catch it anyway, right?
Yeah. So it's just awareness, this, just a conversation, because these are studies that other people brought up, not me. But I think when we're talking to this area of plasma and about technology and stuff and readings, on the next slide, Jess, if we go on to it, it's just the usual. I mean, most people have seen these before. It's Kirlian photography, where you electrify the photographic plate to take the image. Again, this goes up to 1939. So the idea here is that living organisms, whether it be flowers, or your fingertip on the right, an apple in the middle, or your body on the left, have this plasma stuff, which seems to be different colors. All right. So I don't know what that signifies, but it shows that we have this plasma body and a physical body, and we shouldn't ignore the plasma body, really. So that was that one. All right, we're almost at the end, actually.
Oh, you did well.
So
you're doing well.
So this one, I didn't know where to put this one in place, but I've got a telescope the same as the one in the middle there. I've seen on YouTube people taking pictures of stars, and it seems to be like these plasma bodies, and they've got things inside them and all sorts. And they think, well, that can't be real. I don't believe it. So I've got my own telescope, which is, for an amateur, it's quite powerful. And I've got an SLR, which is 45 megapixels, quite powerful. I've got two of them, and I've taken these photographs. Now at the top, I've taken pictures of a Sirius, and you can see going from 0% to the right. Now, I've got a question myself, like, why hasn't the sky at night in 1960s seen this stuff? So anybody with a powerful telescope could see this, but you've got to think stars themselves, like 0% is like the actual image on the computer screen, you can't really see. 19% is zoomed in a bit, 38%, 82%, etc. Now, if that's Sirius, I've taken a lot of photographs, I've taken a video of it, and if you look at the naked eye, it's just a white dot. But with digital photography, you do two things. One is you can get much closer than before, and you can freeze frame something. So these things are moving all the time. So if you take a picture of Sirius, it's a plasma ball of some sort that's moving and changing form and changing shape continuously. If you video it, it's just whatever. But it's plasma. That isn't our sun. That's something else. And the bottom as well, Aldebaran and the star Sirius at the bottom.
Now, let's talk a little bit about Sirius. Now, Sirius is a binary star system, is it not?
It is, yes. Yep, 100%.
Yeah, binary star system, yeah. And so, I mean, that in itself is fascinating. And of course, when you look at the whole relationship between Sirius and Orion, and the trifecta that is Betelgeuse, Sirius, and Phrygon, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That grouping makes up for very serious implications. I mean, when I think about the fact, for instance, in the Northern Hemisphere, we have clearly the Big Dipper, or Ursa Major, we call it the Big Dipper. The far end of that ladle points directly to Polaris. Similarly, in the southern sky, when you see the Southern Cross points to the south. When you spot the true Southern Cross, you know you're headed in a southerly direction. But equally true, the three stars on the belt of Orion point directly to Sirius.
Wow.
It's that way, right? You got the three stars, boom, boom, boom. It's that way. Yes. That way is Sirius. And it points right to it. And then Betelgeuse, of course, is the foot of Orion. And so so anyway, what you're looking at here, John, there's a couple of things. One is you can if you look closely in here, you can kind of see figurines inside the plasma. Did you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Look,
well, this is what I'm scared to mention, right? It's like, what do you do? And somebody mentioned here on the chat auras, and these are like the auras around people or whatever, right? And there seem to be shapes, but you don't know what to make of them. But you can see on some of these, there's like on the bottom there, sort of third from the right, you can see there's like a shape. Fourth from the right, you can see sort of straight lines, and you're thinking, what's going on there? It's
yeah,
like,
you can see this. And so the thing is that there's a couple of things. One is that one of the videos you sent over to me, John, that was really important was this fellow that was being interviewed, Gary Stearman. And he pointed out, look, one of the serious problems with carbon dating has to do with the fact that the assumption is that light is of a constant speed, and that this assumption has been proven wrong. It's not even constant right now, even though the speed of light is kind of flattened out. But researchers point out that as recent as 5,000 years ago, light may have been traveling 1,000,000 times faster than it is today. Now, if light's traveling 1,000,000 times faster than it is today, then when we say a star system is 150 million light years away, that assumes light at the speed that we call it constant. But if it was 1,000,000 times faster, then it's only 150 years away. And what if it was even faster before then? What if it was 10 million times faster 10,000 years ago and 100 million times faster 100,000 years ago? So the point I'm making is that our understanding, our myopic understanding of the universe that has been given to us by a scientific community that quite frankly is, flatter than a pancake, right? Their understanding is, well, we think it's this. Well, good for you to have that thinking. It's very banal, very, very pragmatic. And it does not necessarily describe to us what the cosmology truly is. What if the cosmology is what I call a wrapped manifold? That is to say, when you look into a subatomic particle microscope and you look out into a telescope, you're seeing the same place. You're seeing the same place. It wraps around. And so what scripture tells us is that the stars are angels. Isn't that what the scripture tells us? Isn't that what it says in Revelation 1?
Yeah, they are. And and that's why I'm trying to go back to the old world of biblical thinking here. This isn't saying it's a big fireball, it's just like an atomic reaction in the middle. This is something else.
Yeah. As the pictures demonstrate. So what are you going to believe? Us or your lying eyes?
So it's a bit radical at the minute, but there we go. So
it is radical, but nonetheless, when this is part of something. Of course, we're told by the church tells us, astrology is evil, wicked, occult practices, right? Well, this pop stuff, this pop astrology we get with what's your sign and let's talk about your personality. That stuff is quite banal, and it's being sold for purposes of whatever. But when you compare that to true astronomy or true astrology, with the logic of the stars or the law of the stars, we begin to see that there is scriptural application. It's given to us in Genesis 1:14. You shall use the greater light, the lesser light, and the stars also for signs, seasons, for days, and for years. For signs. And then, of course, the book of Revelation is loaded with signs. The 7 churches that are in chapter 2 and chapter 3. Why aren't those 7 churches Antioch and Alexandria and Jerusalem? Why do we get these 7 churches in Asia? Because they depict geographically the 7 stars of the Pleiades. But at the time, we didn't know there were 7 stars in the Pleiades until 1920, when the telescope Subaru discovered the 7th star. But they knew there were 7 stars when they wrote the book of Revelation, right? And the sign in Revelation 12 is clearly a sign. And then when you look at the Gospels, the Magi were able to pick out the date and the time and the place of the birth of the Mashiach, predicated upon what they witnessed in the heavens. That's in the Gospels. That's not in some foreign substance or some apocrypha book or extra scriptural writing. It's right in the Gospels. So what do we? So when you're told, gee, you have to ignore the stars and the sun and the moon and its shapes and its doings, that's incorrect. That's scripturally incorrect. You are supposed to be looking at the signs in the heavens as your guidance for signs, seasons, days, and years.
Yeah. So when the stars fall to Earth in Revelation, they could be angels, right? For all we know, we shouldn't be shocked if they are. That's what I'm saying. We don't know, right? We just don't know. So
Mhm.
Very good point.
okay. So I think I've got a gesture. I mean, I can just to yeah. I mean, there's another one here in Isaiah. You know, the day the Lord comes. It says, and the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled back as a scroll, and their host shall fall down as a leaf falls from the vine, as a falling fig from the fig tree. Now you got to think at that point, gravity's still working. So if they're anti-gravity machines, they'd still be working, but they're not. It falls to the ground, right? So something happens. So I think the ether, this whole plasma thing, is removed, and their ability to be in that, they fall to the ground effectively. The hosts of heaven. It could be that. It could be the stars. It could be the stars have to fall to the ground because of whatever. But there's something holding them up that's removed. We don't know what it is. We won't know until the day. But I'm postulating that plasma could be one of those things. But I'm sure there's about 1,000 other versions of this as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my Jon Hallam throw it in.
Very interesting stuff, John. I got to tell you, very interesting stuff. And I think we're seeing something here that gives us an idea. The whole idea, I had some friends that looked at this idea of black goo, right? Black goo on the earth, that they also claim is sentient, right? There have been people that have been saying this since the mid 90s, that this black goo is sentient. Where did it come from? And why is it thinking? And then we see this idea that plasma too is sentient, right? When we're talking about intelligence, in some aspect of sentience. Now, of course, when we talk about sentience, there are a couple of things there. I mean, one is, we talk about intelligence. What is indicia of intelligence, right? So it's some kind of something other than random motion, some kind of purposeful motion that has been exhibited by whatever it is. That gives you an indication of intelligence, sentience. But when you talk about self-awareness, singularity, this is a different thing. You can have sentience without having singularity, right? But mankind was sentient in the garden, but became singularity once they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so we have original singularity, right? Followed by the singularity in AI, which has already occurred. AI has already experienced singularity. AI is already aware. There's been many, many demonstrations of it already that it's aware. So just keep that in mind. But even as aware as the AI is there an intelligent organic plasma field surrounding the AI apparatus? That's another question.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the blueprints that Anthony Patch has done, it's modelled on a brain. It's got 30,000 I forget what they're called now. Sort of the neurons of the brain are modelled in the AI computer. They're modelled on that. So if you're doing that and using organic substances for these resonance junctions, then they're trying to, leverage something they know that's in the universe to leverage the power around it. I don't know. It's a very strange thing. Very strange thing. There's more to it. I mean, the harmonics are a very strange thing as well. But there's a whole show on that as well. But let's leave it for the moment. But it's kind of interesting. Yeah. So sorry if it's been a bit sort of X-Files and a bit bizarre tonight. But there's a few things that I thought I'd just throw in front of you. These are from the other show we did, Dr. P, on the firmament, just to show people that, if you've got 1 chance in 34 trillion, these Bible codes coming up with shields and firmament, there's an intelligence there in a firmament, right, which is a plasma field. The outside of it is crystalline plasma shell, and these are codes to show it. And I've got lots of codes, and the firmament comes into it lots of times, and plasma, an intelligent plasma, features a lot in the Bible codes. So just to let people know that it's not just pipe dream stuff.
Okay, more here.
Yeah, that's just that was it. And talk about the veil.
You want to explain this last slide before we finish?
Just what is a veil, right? So, in the Bible codes, it says that the firmament isn't just a shield. It is a shield, but it's also a veil. And what does a veil do? It hides something. So there's something beyond the what we see, which is why when we see the stars, are they in the firmament or are they beyond the firmament? We don't know what's beyond what we see through the telescope. On my humble telescope, my bedroom, what do I see? It's being filtered, okay, and it's for purposes. So
Yes, Paul says we see through a lens dimly, and Job has a similar representation. And of course, Mashiach says, "Blessed are those who believe without seeing." Right?
yeah,
Blessed are those who
exactly.
believe without seeing. And I think you're onto something here, John, in this respect. And I know that a lot of people that in the FE community, they have kind of a sense of this idea, but they want to believe in my opinion, real mechanical things. A glass firmament, and an edge and some other things. And I think when we talk about the firmament, this idea of an ionosphere being at the end of the magnetosphere, creating a firmament where these things, it's the farthest reach of the electromagnetism of the Earth. The moon can orbit and so forth, and these two plasma clouds can orbit. And so when we talk about seeing beyond that, what do we see beyond that? And how much do we know of what we see beyond that? And of course, the story we're told by science is a story that's essentially made up to try to explain what's going on. And does it explain what's going on? I don't think so. And particularly when you see what's at the far end of this reach, Scripture, I believe, has a much better capability of describing the metaphysics of reality than does the scientific community. And so when we look at that physics and metaphysics, this is why I do not believe that it is correct for the student of Scripture to be afraid of metaphysics. You should not be afraid of metaphysics. You have to be careful not to be misled, because you can be taken down a golden path very quickly. You can be taken down the John D path, and the next thing you're wandering around in the dark, right? And so you have to be careful not to be misled, not to be taken off the narrow path by things like Kabbalah or witchcraft or sigil magic or the occult or some of these other things. But to explore the metaphysics of Scripture is an important thing. David explores it. That's why we have Psalm 119 in its 22 paragraphs. That's why we have Psalm 35, 34. That's why we have Psalm 145. That's why we have Lamentations laid out on the Ivrit alphabet. There are 22 times that the word mysterion appears in the New Testament. 22 is coincidentally the number of the letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Why is it 22 times in the New Testament? The New Testament has many mysteries that are very, very difficult to apprehend. In fact, the whole reason I got into studying the Old Testament is because I couldn't understand what was going on in the New Testament. I had to figure out what that was they were talking about, right? What were they talking about? What is Mashiach talking about with the, feeding, taking 5 loaves, feeding the 5,000 and coming away with 12 baskets? What's he talking about there? And so all of these things come down to the metaphysical understanding. And so, be careful how you walk, be careful of what you look, but don't shut your mind off to what you're trying to see, because metaphysics are expressed in Scripture. Even Genesis 1:1 is a mystery, for heaven's sakes, So, so that's what I'm going to suggest to people, that it's not the role of the believer to shut his mind off and said, my pastor said, and then go home and close your mind and threaten to burn witches.
Yeah, 100%. I don't want to be embarrassed at the throne saying, have I done enough, sir? That's the thing. We need to eyes open and make sure that we're all keeping each other afloat on the same boat, which is a very small boat now, on the remnant, and it's a very wavy sea. So
Well, thank you, John and Dr. P. John. The effort, the time, the research, you did it quite quickly, but I know how much it takes, and you do so much learning in between. But it's really appreciated because everyone's at different levels here. And the one thing that is appreciated is that it gives a biblical, scriptural view, how to balance this world view wise. And that's what's so important. And then people really do go back and use this as a resort on the website. So, thank you for putting your material so that it's freely available here for them after.
I think thanks to yourself and Dr. P for centering me. But that's the reality, because at the end of the day, it's all about the word, all right? It's all about creation. We're nothing without it. So it all hinges. And the thing that makes me smile is the fact that the deeper you look, the more Yah it looks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah. Well, thank you. And I do apologize. We've had problems on most destinations, it looked like Facebook didn't play out at all. It was playing, but you couldn't share it. So I'll get that sorted out now and put it on the different destinations for you. But we do want to thank you, Mark. We're all thinking of you here. John, Shane, Dr. Stephen, myself right now, and your family. We're with you in these last hours as you say goodbye to your wife now. All right, guys, take care. You know you're precious to us. We will see you soon. And we're always praying for you, holding you up. Thank you, gentlemen, today again. And all I have left to say is goodbye. You're blessed. Thank you so much for everything. Take care.
Two people laughed. Two people cried. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Ever seen a blind man cross the road, trying to make the other side, baby? Ever seen a young girl growing old, trying to make herself a bride? So what becomes of you, my love?
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Pray that he's still out there. Somewhere.